All right, so today we're gonna get a little upper body in, and I'm gonna talk about a few different reasons why I see people's progress stalling in their training, and gonna go off the cuff a little bit, and probably use a few different examples from my coaching experience and through my own experience, and we're just gonna see where it goes. So today's big thing is gonna be overhead press, and I really haven't been doing a lot of overhead press lately. I was really working on handstand push-ups for a while, but I'm really wanting to get a 225-pound overhead press this year. And this is the place where we'll start for reasons why people don't progress. You can see I'm doing a behind the neck press. And one of the first reasons that I see people just not really progressing is that they don't have a solid belief in what their body's capable of achieving. It's 2026. We still have coaches that are debating whether or not overhead press or behind the neck press is bad for your shoulders. There's not bad movements, there's just prepared or unprepared tissue. Like, I just did 50 throws before this, like per arm. And the ability to turn your arm into a whip and throw something as hard as you can is way more dangerous than putting a bar behind your back and pressing it a few times. It's just whether or not your body's prepared for it. So might there be something that needs to be addressed? 100%. But once you have it, the easiest way to keep it safe is to just continue to do it. The second big thing that I see is people giving way too much power to external factors that might matter 1% or 2%, but really don't matter that much. Just before this, we had some Creed playing, and like there's certainly a meme about divorced dad rock being very anabolic and productive to lifting. And if you can listen to music that gets you really pumped up to train, that's great. But deciding that that's where your power comes from is a little bit ridiculous. And I say this not because people give all their power to the good music, but because people complain too much when they have music that does not fit their taste. We also had Miley Cyrus playing earlier. Like, it doesn't affect my training whether or not I have divorced dad rock or peak white girl music. It shouldn't matter. In fact, I think the next time I go for squat PR, I'm going to demand that we play Pink Pony Club, just to prove the point, because there are clients that we have here that will complain if the music's not conducive to their training. And the truth is that if you rely on the music, it's a you problem, not an external factor problem. There are externals that matter. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? How's your life stress? And there are external factors that really just don't matter that much. And oftentimes we give way too much credit to them. Next would be a lack of consistency. And everybody has up and downs in life. But if you can't consistently do what you say you're going to do, A, you're not doing the actual thing, and B, You're creating the belief that you are someone who does not do the things that you say that you're going to do. So each time that you don't do your workout, you are telling yourself, I'm the person who skips it because X reason. Not to say that there's not valid reasons, there certainly are. You have a family emergency, you had to work a 16-hour shift or a double that you weren't expecting, whatever. I get it, but when you have a mild inconvenience and you let that completely detract from your plan, you're going to lose ground. And you're going to teach yourself that you are the person who doesn't mind losing that ground. One of the other issues as we're looking at that battle with consistency is that at the beginning of something, we're often very, very gung-ho instead of letting consistency catch on a track. And so what we'll do is we'll start really hard out the gate, and then as life happens and as things pile up, and we realize I can't sustain this. Now, I'm a big proponent of training every day. I train pretty much every day. There are days that I do feel, okay, my body needs a rest, I need to take it off. It's fine. But that's something that I've built up through a consistent action, and I have a schedule that allows it. Not everybody does. And if you're somebody who's just getting into it and you can train hard 2 days a week, and then you try to train hard 6 days a week from zero, is that going to be something that you can sustain for very long? Because it's completely against where you've been versus getting it in, whether that's training a little bit every day or every few days or training really hard twice a week. We want to start a little small. I'm not saying that you don't challenge yourself. Of course, you need to challenge yourself, but you need to challenge yourself in such a way that you can consistently grow. It's something that I've certainly struggled with in my lifetime in many different areas. My friend Howie said to me maybe a few weeks ago, Kenny doesn't do anything halfway. And that has led to problems and something that I've fixed a lot myself, but still exists. And I see the same thing often happen with people who start really hard and then they kind of burn out. For me, this was not training. This was primarily nutrition and lifestyle. As I said in previous videos, I still struggle a little bit to sleep, but probably for me the hardest one was diet. And I would often try to do things really hard right out the gate, and I'd lose 5, 10, even 15 pounds, but then I would balloon back up. And I'd never reach my goals, and if I did, I would not reach them in a very sustainable way. And I currently have a client who is on a weight loss goal, and he does have some timelines attached to it that are necessary timelines, but he's trying to get a little too far ahead of that. He's like, I'm just gonna cut a lot of the carbs out of my nutrition. And then we had our squat and bench session at the gym, and he performed well under what he had done the week before. It's like, well, what's the difference? It's like, well, you stopped eating carbohydrates and you were not ready to use fat as fuel, and you were not going to be able to sustain that training load, which in his mind, he said, but that's how I've lost weight the fastest in the past has been reducing carbohydrates. And once again, I understand that you really had out the gate, but you can already see it's affecting your training life. So you're actually not gonna be able to train as hard. And in his case, it's like you're losing water weight very quickly. But the fastest you've ever actually lost weight has been the last, let's see, we started seriously working on his diet in maybe June. has been June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, has been the last 8 months, right? So he's lost, I think, a little over 30 pounds now. It's like, well, that's the fastest you've actually lost weight because you actually lost the weight. You didn't lose some water and then put it back on once you had carbohydrates again. So I'm gonna give you guys something that the person who taught me about nutrition first taught me. Because I would go through these same cycles. And he said to me, the fastest way to get there is to get there. So it doesn't matter if you can get halfway to your goal in a short period of time, but not sustain it over the long run. If you can't get to your goal, period, what really matters is that you can do something consistently over a period of time that can get you to your goal. We need to play this long game a little bit more instead of seeking that instant gratification. When we try to take shortcuts, it shows up in our work. For me, I 100% understood where my client was coming from. I've done different variations of elimination diets. There was a month where I did do kind of like a loose carnivore with a refeed every few days. And while I did initially lose some weight, most of the real weight that I lost was just because I was eating less calories. But seeing that immediate from taking away carbohydrates was like, oh wow, I've really lost 5, 6, 7 pounds really quickly. You didn't, you just aren't hydrated as well. So was it really any better than when I started getting more into tracking my calories and tracking my macros, which I don't do as much now. I do it a little bit more loosely because I understand it better. It's not something that you have to do really hard for your whole life. Once you start to understand it, it becomes a lot easier. But the fastest way to get there is to get there. So instead of charging out of the gate and then losing momentum, as you start to get tired, seek smaller wins to build more consistency. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying don't have discipline, but we can only work as hard as possible that we can sustain over time. That's the goal. I work as hard as I possibly can in such a way that I can sustain it over time, not harder than that, or I burn out and it doesn't work. The next is actually the opposite, is that you are the kind of person who underdoses. So instead of going really hard out the gate and becoming inconsistent, you might be a little consistent, but you consistently underdose yourself. In order to make progress, you do have to become uncomfortable at some point. You do have to become stressed at some point, to the point that you can achieve your goals. And it doesn't matter if that's in training, it doesn't matter if that's in sport, it doesn't matter if that's in business, it doesn't matter if that's in your friendships, it doesn't matter if it's in your life, relationships, whatever. You will at some point have to become uncomfortable in order to grow. And if you do everything to mild discomfort and just chronically underdose yourself, you're going to struggle to make progress. I'm going to use the example of a friend of mine who I did some programming for maybe about a year or two ago. And he was a gym guy and he loves to train maybe 5, 6 days a week. And we programmed him for 5 or 6 days a week. I have no issue, because as I said, I like to train that much. But he's like, I can't get strong. He's like, I am struggling to get stronger and I'm struggling to get bigger, which was, something that he obviously wanted for himself. But he also had weird rules like, I don't want to deadlift over 315 pounds. Or I don't want to squat over, I don't know, 265 or 275, something like that. It's like, okay, well, you're a 185-pound male, and I think I see what your issue is on actually putting in mass. You have to train hard enough to actually get the desired result. If you shy away from those things, yeah, it's no wonder why you're not getting stronger, even though you're being consistent. You're just underdosing. You're going to discomfort, or maybe you just want a little bit of a pump, but you're not actually putting enough stress on your body to make it grow stronger and to make it grow bigger. Like, this is our issue. Now there's certain ways around that with, extra volume, but at the end of the day, he had this number in his head that I don't go past this number. Well, at some point you're strong enough that to make progress, you're gonna have to go past that number. All right, pretty sure that was my target for overhead press repetitions today. I did 200 in the past, so that's, I want to say I did 30 reps there, but got a little lost in talking. So maybe that's 70-ish%. Might be a little bit more right now because, like I said, I haven't overhead pressed seriously in a while. 30 reps. So that is something that was some volume at a decent amount of weight. I'm training hard enough to make that progress. These are, you know what? I'm gonna keep this video rolling for chin-ups. I had a whole extra point of what this was, and I can't remember what it was. So we're just get started and see if it comes to us. All right, I remember what it was. The next is, I'm gonna call it walking fast, going nowhere. The next problem would be that you are working hard, but you are doing so without any direction. Now, I believe in concurrent training, which means I train multiple qualities throughout the week. And my training can seem scattered because of that, but they are all attached to different goals, even if I have significantly more goals in a given year than the average person. But if you're walking fast, going nowhere, and we often see this like with like hustle crowds. I'm just gonna work harder. I'm just gonna work harder. For what? And they don't know. They just know I'm gonna work harder. And that is something that plagues me as well. Sometimes I do work hard without direction. Usually not here, usually not in the gym. Might be somewhere else in life. But if you don't know, if you don't know where you're going, what's the effort? We're walking fast, going nowhere. Everybody is kind of cooked right now. Very closely related to this is just the people that run themselves into the ground, and whether that's too much volume, too much intensity, whatever that may be, it's like they try training 5-6 days a week, but they don't actually manage the load that they're training at. And it's just like, I don't know, I keep getting hurt, or I don't know, I'm just chronically tired. Well, maybe that's something that you should look at. So, like I said, that's often very related to that idea of walking fast, going nowhere. I actually stole this for myself in an odd way. I was talking about somebody in the jiu-jitsu community that I saw at Nogi Worlds a few years ago. It seemed like they were in a hurry to be somewhere, but never seemed to actually be going to a destination. If you're in the jiu-jitsu community, you might have an idea of who I'm talking about, because it's kind of a more famous coach, but who I think has a little bit too much self-importance about himself and his own opinions, and does a lot of show about them. But I wasn't surprised to make it look that he looked like he had a sense of urgency, but never seemed to actually be traveling anywhere specifically. It's like, oh, it's like Jason Bourne, but not Jason Bourne. And then I described him as walking fast, going nowhere, and my friend Murph said, oh, that's the saying of the night. So don't walk fast and go nowhere. Walk at a pace that you can sustain going somewhere. And once again, this is not to say don't work hard. I do want you to work hard. I do want you to be a little bit of a meathead, but I want you to understand dosage, load, and training hard without running yourself into the ground. So it's been 23 minutes now. So if you're still watching, I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.